What's going on, everybody? Just as the sun has risen, because it rises every day, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the circumstance is, that sun, it will rise every single day. The weather doesn't matter, the atmosphere doesn't matter. People can't even dictate whether or not the sun will rise, because it will rise every single day. So just as the sun has risen, so should your mind, and definitely your heart. Above all things, because as they rise, above all things, have courage. You're going to need courage in times such as this. So we are now on day number 9 in our journey with vulnerability, walking hand in hand, learning about vulnerability together, exploring it, and more importantly, taking a deep dive within ourselves, being vulnerable with ourselves as we explore what it looks like within us. Because the more that you can assess yourself and understand yourself, have a relationship with yourself, know yourself, then you can better understand what's happening on the outside of you. You see, typically what we find out is we pay more attention to what's going on the outside of us, the condition of the world, the condition of other people, media, social media, right? All these different platforms. We pay so much attention. We give all of our attention, all of our attention, all of our attention. Do you hear what I'm saying? Attention. Yes, you can give it. All of our attention is given to our devices, right? All of our attention is given to the news and the media. All of our attention is given to other people, friends and family, their advice, their information. As we're giving our attention to all of these entities and all these people and all these things, how much attention are we giving to ourselves? Yeah, I hope that opens you up enough to have you have a personal introspective look in that. Give the attention to yourself. You are worth it. You are worth having attention being placed on yourself. Assess your mind. Pay attention to those thoughts. Assess your heart. Pay attention to your feelings, your desires, your urges. Know what's going on within you. Identify these things. Because once you identify them and know and understand them, trust me and believe you can start to develop them. That is building that relationship that is so necessary. So again, we're on day number 9 with vulnerability. And vulnerability, again, has to do with being exposed and present at the same time. You need to know what's going on. Vulnerability, right? Vulnerability, we need to know. And let me give you a snapshot example. Here it goes. So, do you all remember, for those of you that are around my age, right? Do you all remember growing up and you got in trouble? And the first thing that would happen is whoever was disciplining you in that moment would either tell you to go get a branch, go get a belt, whatever the case is, they would come back with something to discipline you. And not only would they come back with something that you can physically see to discipline you, they will go through the act of disciplining you, spanking you. And do you recall what was one of the first things they would say after they were done? As you got tears balling down your eyes, you're crying, trying to grab your breath. You're just bawling out. They look you in the eye. You look them in the eye. And what do they say? You better stop crying. What? You better stop crying. Don't feel what I feel. You're telling me to shut it off? What is that? That is not vulnerability. That's the opposite of vulnerability, right? You have to be aware and feel and be present on what's going on so you can identify with yourself and tell yourself and be conscious with yourself of what's happening within me. So I can be better, so I can change, so I can adjust, so I can be aware. Are you guys feeling what I'm putting down? I hope you're picking it up. I truly hope you're picking it up. So our conversation is going to be based off this book today. This book we've been holding hands with as well. Dare to Lead. It's a great book written by Brene Brown. Great content in there. We're going to utilize this for a conversational piece, right? So we're going to jump right into section number 4. And today, the conversation is going to be through the lens of shame. We're on day number 3, looking through the lens of shame, which is super important. How many times have you had a discussion with somebody that you're close with or somebody that you know about your personal shame? It doesn't happen. I know. I'll wait for your answer. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen often, at least, right? That's a taboo topic. We usually don't express things that we're shamed about. We feel shame about. The reason being is because what shame does, shame personalizes it, right? Shame has to do with the self, what you feel about yourself. Remember, it's a negative evaluation of yourself. That's the first thing it does. It's a self-evaluation that results in negative Negative, that's an evaluation of self. And then what it does is it withdraws motivation. It takes it out. Kind of like going to the bank when you go to the ATM. Boop, 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 boop. You put your code in, right? You put your number in. Then you access your account. If you have money in there, you take it out. You know how it feels when you have money taken out your account? You're like, oh man, you can feel it. That has nothing, and it cannot compare to when motivation is taken out of you. Yes, shame should signal something positive has left. Signal. When you feel like something positive has left you, I strongly recommend that it possibly is shame. Well, let's go take a deeper dive into shame, right? So we know it's the withdrawal of motivation, your why, your purpose, your driving factor, but it inserts these feelings. One of the things that it inserts is the feeling of powerlessness. Feeling like you have no power, right? Without the ability to influence. Feel like I can't influence nothing. I don't have what it takes. I don't have that power. I don't have that control. Shame will insert that feeling. Shame will also insert the feeling of worthlessness. Wow. Worthlessness. I'm not enough, right? Having no feel of value. Have you ever felt like you had no value, right? Shame will also insert the feeling of distress, what has to do with extreme anxiety, extreme sorrow, or extreme pain. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening right now, but I feel this anxiety. I feel this flutter. It possibly leads to shame. That anxiety, if you follow it long enough, pay attention to yourself, listen to yourself, take a deep breath, see, recall, remember, it probably points to shame. Shame will also insert the feeling of mistrust, right? That feeling of mistrust has to do with the feeling of being suspicious all the time, not being able to trust, always suspicious, right? Having no confidence in what you're involved in. I don't trust this. I don't even trust myself. I don't trust myself to be good enough. I don't trust it. Listen, shame is a real thing. But the problem with all these things that I just identified is it makes it part of self. I am powerless. I am worthless. I am anxious. Most people don't want to talk about what they are. They want to talk about what they did, but not what they feel that they are. So let's dive into that, right? So this is what the insert reads in the book that we're going to use for the platform of conversation. It reads, our egos are willing to keep our hearts encased in armor. Our egos, again, the egotistical, that self-mind, that conscious mind, no matter the cost, if we can avoid feeling less than or unworthy of love and belonging, what the ego does not understand is the stunting of our emotional growth and shutting down of our vulnerability does not protect us from shame, disconnection, and isolation. It guarantees them. It does the complete opposite. It does the complete opposite. Again, I want to read that. What the ego doesn't understand is the stunting of our emotional growth and shutting down our vulnerability, which means to close yourself off. We're talking about vulnerability here. I know you hear the passion in my voice because it came from a place within inside of me. I have been going through this exploration and digging into this. I've been trying to lay and feel what I feel. And I tell you what, sometimes it's uncomfortable. It makes me want to shut off, right? Put that armor on, protect myself. I don't want to deal with this. Men, you know what I'm going through. Shut yourself up. Nah, this ain't for me. I'm going to get tough. I'm going to get, you know what? I'm not going to feel this. I'm a man. Men don't feel this. Listen, trust me, vulnerability is okay. Doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're aware. You're presently exposed. Your present is a presence. So you are present. And you're feeling, you're aware of what's going on. You know what it is. I feel this, I know this, I understand this. Let me see what plan I can put in place to correct or wait till this thing goes and leaves. Trust me on that, right? So again, it reads, well, let's further on the conversation. Let's look how shame works and why it can't survive a healthy dose of empathy, right? So that's what the book is diving into. And it, again, talks about shame and how we want to protect ourselves, essentially, right? For some reason, when we get to this place of vulnerability, we're either not conscious of our choice of vulnerability, or we're just aware and conscious of shutting things down. Either way it goes, you have to get to a place where you're in control. Listen, life does not control you. You are in control of your life. You are in control of your relationship with yourself. And the better and the more aware you become with that relationship with yourself, the better that you can then understand the control you have over life, love, happiness, relationships, manifestations of things, success. Yes, success. Many things you have control over. But what happens is, because we're shutting it off, we're not paying attention to how we feel, and we're not giving our thoughts that due process, right? And we're shutting it off, we're not able to feel it. So then what we do is feel like we're not enough. It's not worth speaking up. It's not worth giving my opinion. It's not worth saying anything. As a matter of fact, nobody else is saying anything. What's the point of me saying anything? I'm not gonna speak up for what? Nobody needs to hear this. Matter of fact, not only does anybody need to hear this, ain't nobody saying nothing. So why am I going to say something? I can't change the world. I can't change my situation. I can't change what's going on. So I'm not going to say nothing. As a matter of fact, the people that are saying, forget them, man. They're crazy for speaking up. That doesn't even make sense. Why would you speak up? Hold back, hold back, hold back. Do you hear the transition from I'm not enough to blaming other people? That's what happens when you're not vulnerable. What happens even more is beneath that surface that you are literally holding and blocking, beneath that, shame is grabbing root. Yes, as I mentioned before, shame is a seed that is planted in the soil of your being. So once you understand that, if you feel that positivity leaving you, you need to assess your being, assess yourself to see if that's the seed of shame. And the identifiers, right? Because it's important to identify things. The identifiers are, one, do you feel powerless? Do you feel that you are powerless? Not do you feel powerless, but do you feel that you are powerless? Do you feel the sense of mistrust? Do you feel like I'm not trustworthy? You can't trust me right now. Do you feel distress, high anxiety? I am anxious. I'm anxious. Do you feel that? All these different things, all these feelings, right? These strong feelings are identifiers. And once you can identify things, you can then make plans on addressing things. And I want to talk a little bit about what are different ways that we can address this conversation of shame, right? So before we do that, I want to further the conversation on the expressions of shame. How do you identify whether or not someone is feeling shame or if you're feeling shame? One example could be blushing of your face. That could be an example, right? When you feel shameful in a shameful way, your body reacts. It's a response to what's going on inside of you, right? So your face starts to blush. Second thing is slumped head. Not good enough. Whatever, right? That slumped head, that lowered disposition, because shame that lasts in you can create these chemicals in you that create stress. Because remember, we create anxiety, which creates stress, and we know stress can wear on our body, and then it just breaks us down. That's an identifier, right? Another thing is the wish or the desire to hide. People that isolate themselves all the time, even yourself, you feel like you want to be antisocial, you want to hide, you feel like whatever you did, you just want to get away because you're not worth it. You have no sense of worth to be around. Whatever, if they only knew what was happening on the inside, so I'm gonna stay away. If they only knew what I struggled with, I'm just gonna keep my mouth closed. If they only knew what I am because of what I did and what I am, because remember, shame self-identifies. Nobody wants to mess with me, so since nobody wants to mess with me, I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to involve myself. These are the identifiers, folks. And the last thing, and this is something we need to slow down with, because this is something that's serious, that's happening to people you know, maybe even to yourself. I don't know where you're at within your own honesty, and you've definitely heard this. Shame eventually can cause people to want to die. Suicide. That's a real thing. That is a real thing. So it's so important to identify shame early on so that we all together can make the proper changes, the necessary adjustments, or just be aware. Together we can do this. Together. This can, again, help you become a better person overall. It's that process of growth, that process of growth, that process of growth, that process of evolving, that process of transforming, right? Or as my twin would say, renewing, resetting, growing. Renewing, resetting, growing. Let's identify these things. So, the first thing is, what are ways you can approach shame? The first thing you have to understand is shame is a strong emotion. So, it's no different than the weather. Emotion is no different than the weather. It comes and it goes. Comes and it goes. So if you understand that what you're feeling right now, if you feel powerlessness, if you feel worthlessness, if you feel anxiety, it's going to come. It may stay for a little bit. You may feel it because you may be in it, right? Sometimes when you're in things, it can seem like it's lasting for a while, but eventually it's going to pass. It's going to pass, right? It's going to pass. That's the first thing. So be patient. That's a form of love. Be patient with yourself. You don't have to change it all today. You may feel it, and it's because you feel it doesn't mean you have to make some kind of proper adjustment right now to get rid of it. Just feel it. Pay attention to it. Write it down. Write down on a piece of paper, right? It's going to pass. Eventually, this too shall pass. Again, the second thing is maybe you need to alter your standards, right? As long as it's appropriate. Oftentimes, when people feel this sense of shame, sense of self-worth, low self-esteem, whatever the case might be, maybe it's because you're setting your standards a little bit too high, right? Some people do go online and they see pictures of people that look a certain way, and so they're trying to match that or become that. And because they don't see that in themselves, they feel this sense of shame. Don't focus on other people. Focus on small-term goals. Set small-term goals, realistic goals, right? So if you're trying to change the way you look, start by doing small things like change the way you act, because that can inadvertently change how you look. So maybe it's getting out of bed every day, and for the first day, maybe it's doing 5 push-ups, 5 sit-ups, 5 push-ups, 5 sit-ups. The next day do that. The next day do that, right? Or maybe don't set your standards so high to do something that you know you're not going to be able to do. That's all I'm really trying to say. In the process of becoming what you're trying to become, set short-term goals or long-term goals. Just know what your standards are and make those proper adjustments. If necessary, it's okay to make those adjustments. Trust me, it's okay. The third thing is you want to avoid the blame game. What happens is shame will definitely put you in a position where you want to blame other people, because in those moments where you feel like you don't have that power, you're not good enough, and you're concealing or shutting down, and you don't want to be vulnerable and you want to hold it in. Remember what I talked about earlier. It starts by saying, I'm not good enough, and then it goes to the blame game, right? Start blaming people. You're feeling a certain type of way, and somebody comes across you or in your presence, maybe let's say if it's at work or something, I don't know. Let's say if you're going to work and you're not feeling the best about yourself because you're not performing well at your job, and it's been month over month and you're not performing, and in your mind you can hear the talks of other people, and it's just addressing your body. You feel weak, you feel low, and then somebody that walks by that's doing something that you wish you were doing, they're lying. They must be cheating. They must be doing something wrong. Something about them is not right, right? That's the blame game. Don't be so easily moved. Stay in position. Allow the feeling to pass. Be aware of it. Pay attention of it, right? Write it down if you have to, but don't blame other people. Trust me, because when you do things like that, you can't reverse it. Sorry, you can't. You may say things out of context. You may say things out of a sense of emotion because you're really trying to drill home some kind of a message of how you feel. It may be inappropriate. Breathe. Right, breathe. That's the thing. I actually do that. At times when I feel like I'm not the best version of myself and I'm not having these good thoughts and not these good feelings, before I go into anything serious, whether it be at work or it be at home or whatever the case might be, I truly try to practice breathing. 5, 6, 7. That's a technique I try. It works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, but it's getting in that state of meditation essentially, right? Coming back to that sense of wholeness, focusing on self, bring it back to me. That's what it's really about, me. It's about you, right? Bringing it back to you, getting a sense of wholeness. 5, 6, 7 is breathing in 5 seconds, holding it for 6, and then breathing out of your mouth for 7. Try it. Hope it works. So the last point, when we're talking about shame, these are some strategies again that I'm talking about now. Confession. Confession can sometimes lead to redemption, depending on what you're shameful of feeling this shame about, this sense of shame about, right? It could be something that maybe happened in your childhood that wasn't addressed, right? And you were unaware that you were feeling shame, but you knew that you were feeling powerless in certain situations. You knew you had this high sense of anxiety. You weren't sure why. You knew that you had this low sense of self-worth, And now that you know these identifiers, this could potentially be shame, and this could be your situation, maybe just connecting with the people in your family that you knew during childhood and confess to them how you felt about what was happening during your childhood. Because oftentimes what you can, and even to a counselor or to a therapist, right? This confession, this sense of confession. Because oftentimes what ends up happening is this. When you confess, when you release and you talk about these things, and depending on who you're talking to, you can either feel this sense of relief because now you've gotten it out, right? You did a courageous act, and that's redeeming. You're redeeming your sense of self. Or you might discover something new that you probably weren't even aware of. Maybe the situation wasn't as bad as you thought. You never know. All I'm simply saying is make that effort, right? Again, thank you guys for staying with me. This is day number 9. Trust me, you may see me animated and excited and presenting a message to you in a way that's hopefully deliverable, that you can retain this information, all right? Or impact you, or maybe share it with somebody else. Or maybe it's not for you right now in this moment, and maybe eventually will be tomorrow, or the next day, or the next week. I don't know, but all I'm simply trying to say is this. We all go through different challenges. That does not mean that you're not special. That doesn't mean that you're not worth it. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you because you go through things. We all go through them. Heck, I just went through something. But I'm going to tell you this. In this process, I am doing my best to pay attention to myself so I can identify what's going on, not only within myself as I lead myself. It makes me more effective to help lead other people. And I'm not talking about a position. Nah, when we talk about leading people, we're not talking about positions. Please get that right. We're talking about influence, baby. Straight up influence. Influence yourself first, and then go out to look to influence others. Very similar to what it says in the Bible. For those of you that read the Bible and into religion, right? Or spirituality, whatever you're into. But there's a reference to that when it relates to Jesus. So Jesus was walking, and he just got done talking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees and really setting them straight. And then somebody came to him and wanted to test him. Said, Jesus, I had a question for you. Which one of the commandments are the greatest commandment to follow? So Jesus looks at him, he looks at Jesus, and Jesus knew his heart. He knew what his intent was trying to do. He knew his intent. So he gave him an honest answer. He said, the first and the greatest commandment is to love God with all of your mind, your soul, and your heart. And I took time to think about that. I said, so what does that mean to me, especially in the context of what we're talking about? Well, first, if I'm loving God with my heart, with my feelings, that means I'm loving the Creator, because that's what God is the Creator of all things, right? And if he's the Creator of all things, that means he's existence. He is existence. So that means I have to connect to what I'm existing to, live my existence. I have to connect to life. I have to connect to the wholeness. I have to connect to the one. I have to give the one my feelings, my emotions. I have to not give, I have to love with my feelings. So love is an act of patience. Love is an act of self-examination. Love is an act of giving. So when I'm loving God with my heart, I'm being honest about what's in my heart, because no different than when you love somebody else, you're being honest with them, you're sharing in this relationship. So I'm assessing myself in myself, because I have a relationship with God within myself, within my heart. I'm also assessing my mind. So all I'm simply trying to say is it's a personal relationship with self and connecting it to the one that you believe in to be your God, your Creator, right? So that's what Jesus was trying to say. That's the first greatest commandment. Because once you establish a relationship with yourself and your Creator, the second thing is then love your neighbor as yourself. How are you going to love somebody? How are you going to effectively lead somebody? How are you going to influence somebody if you don't know how to influence yourself? Listen, these things don't come by mistake. Everything has its reasons. Every principle you learn, every standard you learn, it has its reasons. There's reasons behind all of this. Trust me. Trust me. We just all talk a little bit different. We all communicate a little bit different. We're all part of different cultures. So one day we're going to have a universal language to understand one another. Let's start with vulnerability. Day number 9 in the books. Tomorrow is day number 10. You guys be blessed, and most of all, it's 2020. Create clarity. Create clarity in your life. Peace.